Sometimes all it takes is one role to change your career. This is especially true of Seann William Scott, who became a huge star from American Pie. His role as the crude, rude, dim-witted dude Stifler gained him enough notoriety that would impact his career forever. Before American Pie, Seann William Scott himself was not a particularly noteworthy performer. He had 0 feature film credits to his name, and his most notable forays into performing were appearing in a Sunny Delight commercial and an Aerosmith video. At age 28, he was working at the Home Depot and going on lots of auditions, and it was that conviction that eventually resulted in American Pie. Part of his early struggles can be attributed to how Scott initially saw himself. Scott told NBC in 2008, "I always anticipated having a career in sports, but movies were my passion. I was reminded that I could have a life outside of being a stressed-out professional athlete. I realized I could use the same work ethic and apply it to another career that I love. I graduated early, told my coaches I wasn't going to play sports anymore, and moved to LA. I got lucky, got a manager, and that was that." When Scott was first hired for the role of Stifler, it hadn't been written as a major character. In fact, Stifler only had a passing presence in the story. Scott told Entertainment Weekly in 2019, "The Stifler character was in 2 or 3 scenes, and he was written to be such an hole that I was like, I don't even know if I'd want to play this guy. So I was like, I'm going to rewrite a bit of it, make him the guy you hate to love. He's probably insecure. He's like the guy who wants to be loved the most." As it would turn out, his meager scripted presence in the production resulted in a mediocre payday. Despite portraying a fan-favorite character in the sex comedy, Scott only scored $8,000 for playing the role. The summer of 1999 began with moviegoers counting down the days to the first new Star Wars movie in 16 years. By the end of that season, many had shifted to discussions of the over-the-top raunch of American Pie. A good deal of this talk involved Seann William Scott, who embodied a classic version of abrasive masculine immaturity and whose commitment to the part turned what could have been a nuisance into a fan favorite. Scott's appeal as Stifler was so strong that it even lasted well into the various Pie sequels. While reviewing 2012's American Reunion, Roger Ebert mentioned his affinity for Scott's Stifler while calling him a highlight of the film. Ebert shared, "Seann William Scott has made the role of Stifler his own and seems able to morph his face into an entirely new person. Narrowed eyes, broad maniacal grin, frightening focus, still with all the zeal for seduction and adventure he had in high school. The ingenuity with which he destroys the jet skis of 2 jerks can only be admired." Even in these more enlightened times, a 2019 retrospective review of the original American Pie that criticized the feature's politically incorrect elements still found time to praise Scott's performance. Years removed from when American Pie first hit theaters, Scott can still drum up enough praise to remind everyone why he became the film's biggest breakout star. In the wake of American Pie, Scott's status as an actor was significantly elevated. His first appearance, in 2000's original Final Destination, was a brief one that had him meeting a graphic demise on screen. After that, Scott headlined the Todd Phillips feature Road Trip, another raunchy comedy that cast him among a group of students who hit the road in pursuit of sexual delights. Other roles around this time included Dude, Where's My Car and Evolution, all playing off the dim, horny jock persona he suddenly had all to himself. It's an age-old Hollywood question. Do you lean into your notoriety and risk the diminishing returns of repetition, or do you try to blaze a unique path and risk alienating your newfound fans? Scott shared in 2003 about his struggle with such questions, saying, "I was like, nah, being the funny guy, that's not why I came to LA, but I appreciated it, and I realized that this is really just a blessing to be able to make people laugh." When a comedy becomes as successful as American Pie, it's only a matter of time before talk turns to a sequel. Pie presented a pair almost immediately. The first of these arrived in 2001 under the name American Pie 2. A smash hit, its success got American Wedding greenlit, which would arrive in 2003. Suddenly, the franchise wasn't about teenage sexual escapades anymore, but instead, watching the characters navigate various stages of young adulthood. Through it all, Stifler remained an anchor of immaturity who could always be counted on for crazy antics and ill-advised situations. Scott admitted in 2003, "I don't know why people like the character. It's because of the way his friends played off that character. Because if they would have dismissed him and just treated him as another asshole, as an audience member, you'd be like, whoa, he's just a jerk. But they just play with him, and they accept what he does.
very unpleasant individual, you know that?
While films like 2001's Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back and 2003's Old School cast Scott in supporting roles, he also got plenty of opportunities to become a leading man. In 2003, he was cast opposite fellow rising star Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in Peter Berg's So-So: The Rundown. He also signed on for 2005's high-profile reboot of The Dukes of Hazzard. Despite a massive ad campaign, Dukes bombed both critically and at the box office. A string of ill-conceived comedies followed, many trying to recapture that Stifler magic. 2007's American Loser cast him opposite Gretchen Mol as a rudderless adolescent adult. That same year, Mr. Woodcock put him opposite Billy Bob Thornton as an adult looking to get revenge for his adolescence. 2008's The Promotion had Scott competing with John C. Reilly to get past the adolescent ways that had stopped them from advancing in their careers. In 2008, however, Scott made a dent with Paul Rudd on one of his first star vehicles, Role Models. Trying to put some space between his model's character and Stifler, Scott said at the time, "He's not really mean to anybody. He's actually a very optimistic guy. But clearly the whole physicality of it and that vibe is very similar. But I had wanted to add something that made him a little more irreverent." Role Models earned significantly better reviews than Hazard and Scott's other films of this period, and also fared better at the box office. But still, now a decade after his American Pie breakthrough, Seann William Scott was still trying to overcome the same typecasting limitations. Like many other comedic actors before him, Seann William Scott tried to branch out with more serious films. It was a smart endeavor, but unfortunately, it seems he may have just bet on the wrong horses. His big, high-profile leading man play was undoubtedly Bulletproof Monk. The 2003 film was based on a comic book. It was also the directorial debut of in-demand music video director Paul Hunter and starred Chow Yun-fat. This was a high-profile action film that had potential to launch a franchise, with Sean's character as its Luke Skywalker-like hero in training. What could go wrong? To answer that question, ask yourself, when was the last time you heard anyone talk about Bulletproof Monk? Around the same time, he signed up for what was a very in-demand movie, Southland Tales. It was filmmaker Richard Kelly's feverishly anticipated follow-up to Donnie Darko, a movie that seemed to have announced the arrival of Hollywood's newest auteur. Unfortunately, the production became notoriously troubled, the film was rumored to be largely incoherent, and after years of delays, was released with little fanfare. In more recent years, Scott has appeared in the grisly thriller Bloodline and the crime drama Already Gone, but neither of them fared much better. In 2010, Seann William Scott kicked off a new decade by connecting with one of the most prolific names in 1990s indie cinema. Filmmaker Kevin Smith probably seemed like a safe bet, as did starring opposite the legendary Bruce Willis. What Scott most likely didn't anticipate, however, was a troubled production that had the original title dropped against Smith's wishes, the director and leading man coming to despise each other, and the entire experience being so miserable that Smith hasn't made a studio film since. Scott was, however, one of the funnier parts of the finished film. Despite Cop Out faring poorly with critics and the box office, it did earn the actor a dream role. Well, maybe. Smith even considered his collaboration with Scott to be the inspiration he needed to push Hit Somebody, a hockey comedy based on a Warren Zevon song, across the goal line. In 2010, Smith explained, "Sean, for me, was the key into the character. This dude has something in him that you can just see hang so well on Buddy. He's got some pain that's going to work out well." As you may have guessed, Hit Somebody has still not made the leap from the page to the silver screen. It was going to be 2 movies, then 1 movie again, then a miniseries, and eventually Smith just read the script on his podcast in 2018. Whether the film is ever resurrected, and whether Scott will still play the part, seems doubtful at this point. Fortunately, if you want to see Scott in the world of hockey, we still have his 2 Goon films. In 2013, Seann William Scott returned to the role that had made him a household name with American Reunion. It was the 4th installment of the franchise and had the American Pie gang return for more raunchy escapades. This gave Scott the opportunity to return to the role of Stifler, now a decade older but only marginally wiser.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Scott didn't need any compulsion to come back to the franchise that made him. In fact, according to him, it was his idea. He shared, "It was a long time in the making because I pitched the movie 3 years ago. The idea of bringing everybody back for a high school reunion. I said 3 years ago, wow, how much fun is it going to be to play Stifler in his 30s? It was a blast. 2 decades after his American Pie breakthrough, Scott is still a working actor, although it's hard to argue that any of his several dozen roles has come close to Stifler as far as mass appeal and awareness. In 2018, he took over the lead role in the Fox cop show Lethal Weapon. Though he was coming on to a program fraught with behind-the-scenes drama, Scott's presence on the show gave it a much-needed positive boost in publicity. Intriguingly, Scott apparently pursued the role himself once he saw that the show's original lead, Clayne Crawford, had been fired by the program. Though Lethal Weapon with Scott in the lead role lasted just 1 season, that wasn't the end of his TV work. Later in 2021, he'll be back on the Fox network with Welcome to Flatch, a docu-comedy that aims to be The Office for small-town America. A comedic project, Flatch seems like it could represent a fundamental shift in Scott's career, as he plays an authority figure in the lives of some younger troublemakers. Perhaps this is the beginning of Seann William Scott reinventing himself as a middle-aged actor whose days of frivolity are behind him. It has now been well over 2 decades since Scott's life was changed forever through the antics of Stifler and American Pie. Though it has had its ups and downs, he has insisted that he has no regrets about the career-launching role. Scott said in 2018, "I didn't think Martin Scorsese was going to cast me in his next movie. I understood why I wasn't getting cast for other things. I would have been a distraction. I kind of pigeonholed myself, but I felt really lucky to get the chance to make people laugh." Given that the combined worldwide grosses of his movies have exceeded $1 billion, it is hard to feel too bad for Seann William Scott. Some gambles have paid off, others have not. But talk to any actor, and they'll most likely tell you they'd be happy to have a decades-long career with more than 30 TV and film projects under their belt. As Scott himself put it in 2018, "I just got lucky with American Pie. That movie gave me a career." Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more Looper videos about your favorite celebrities are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.